I don't know. I know I said there would be no straight, hard, cold facts, but you guys, Monopoly, that ain't it. Welcome and welcome back, everybody. T here, and in today's video, I have another 5 disappointing games. So, as with all the videos in this series, there is no disrespect meant towards anybody who has worked on these games, any fans, and this is not cold, hard, straight facts. This is just my personal experience and my opinion on these particular games, along with some hopefully helpful suggestions, whether you're on one side of the fence or the other. Without further ado, let's get started. First game on this list has been wildly popular ever since its release in 2016, and that is Scythe from Stonemaier Games. This game seeks to do a lot of different things in one package. There is some engine building with your particular clan board, there's some area control with your mechs out on the board, there's some combat, there's a little bit of Euro-ness with resource generation and objective fulfillment. There's just a lot going on. And I will say that this game is in my 5th slot because of all the games on this list today, this is the one that I would be most willing to play again, or the one that at some point I did actually enjoy, but that was a long time ago. So overall, this game to me exemplifies the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none. Like I said, it tries to do all of these different things, which could be really cool if you're looking for something unique that tackles all of that. Be my guest, have fun, but it is not for me. I think the biggest letdown in this one was the combat, and I'm not a huge fan of combat games. For the size and scale of the game, I think that the combat felt really flat. And I know that it's not a combat-driven game. However, there are some big plays that are based off of combat, and it can feel really great or really terrible. So if you're not familiar, essentially you have a wheel, you decide how many combat points to spend, and then you can play cards to boost that up. And it's one reveal and it's done. There's no mitigation after the fact or anything. And I think for a game that tries to also be strategic and tries to have a long kind of game arc, it feels like it's a cool mechanic, but it doesn't feel like it fits, if that makes sense. So in terms of alternatives for this game, it really kind of falls into one of two camps for me. The first camp being more economic focused games, and the second camp being more area control, kind of miniatures out on the map, combat games. My favorites are going to tend to lean more towards the economic side of things. So there are 3 games: Clans of Caledonia, Terra Mystica, and Gaia Project. Of the 3, Clans is my favorite. It's the one I've played the most. Terra Mystica is also very excellent though, and Gaia Project I haven't played, but it's right in that same universe with a different theme. These games all feature a similar feel to the economic, more Euro side of Scythe, where you are going to be placing out buildings onto the map, collecting resources, and then trading them in to fulfill orders. I just think that in Scythe, having the objective of just getting your stars to trigger the end of the game and then counting up points feels more catch-all than the more specific point detailing that happens in these more Euro-style games. In Clans, for example, you're going to not only get points for the orders that you fulfill, but endgame scoring based on the areas that you control on the board, as well as round-to-round scoring based on different objectives from game to game. And at the end of the game, you'll also get points for, you'll also retroactively get points for the orders that you've scored and the types of different items that are on those orders. So there's a lot more planning, a lot more crunchiness in terms of like the point breakdown there, which I find to be a lot more satisfying. And again, there's no kind of interim of just random events happening or random people coming in and attacking you. Like, yes, you can block out your opponents from certain advantageous locations or to the orders that they're working towards, but it's not a direct head-to-head conflict, and there's no bluffing or guessing in terms of like, am I going to lose everything that I just worked on in this one spot? On the other side of the spectrum are 3 games that I am not an expert on. I am not a huge fan of this genre, but that is area control, and the 3 games that definitely come to mind that are on this scale of this level are Kemet, Cyclades, and Inish. Inish is the one that I've played, and all of these games, again, feature having miniatures out on a large-scale board, head-to-head combat, controlling different areas, and overall give like that side of Scythe a really solid standing. Again, I'm not an expert on these particular games, but if you liked that aspect of Scythe and wanted more of that, that is the camp that I would go into. Again, overall, I don't think that Scythe is a terrible game. If you're looking for something that does a little bit of everything, that is great. But for me, it just felt overall very unfulfilling. And the more that I play it, the less that I want to play it again, unfortunately. And again, part of that is due to the game elements, how they come together, but part of it is just having more experience in the hobby. And to be fair, like, these two groups of 3 games are titans in the board game industry. When you're going toe-to-toe with such amazing, well-established games, there's definitely going to be a chance that your game may fall flat in comparison. Next up on the list is kind of on the opposite spectrum. It is a tiny little card game that features an I Cut You Choose mechanic, and that is Zooscape from designer Hisashi Hayashi. This game didn't have the best ratings, so I wasn't super hopeful, but I have to say I love Hisashi Hayashi's games. He's designed some of my favorites, like Yokohama and Metro X, so I wanted to give this a try, not to mention the absolutely stunning card art and my just love of small card games in general. So over the course of the game, you'll be laying out a row of cards and placing down a zookeeper to kind of split up the cards. Everybody else will kind of choose. Unfortunately, in this game, although it seems like it should be a simple, streamlined game, the resolution of the I Cut You Choose tended to be a little bit messy, and the set collection itself didn't really have anything super special about it. This is one that I think for me, the art got me so hyped up on it, and obviously the designer, that it just felt really flat. Another alternative, if you're looking for an I Cut You Choose style card game with gorgeous art, is Skyward. This is one of my favorites. So essentially here you're going to be making piles of cards. Everybody else will draft piles and then you'll take them. It has some cool set collection and some cards that combo really nicely together. It's also one that's pretty easy to teach and pretty easy to pick up. But unfortunately, Zooscape's mechanics and gameplay didn't live up to its gorgeous presentation. Next on the list is another game that overall was super gorgeous, love the theme, but the gameplay felt very flat, and that was The 100 Tori. This game is a tile laying game where you're going to be creating paths to collect different points based on items that you'll see alongst the path, all in a gorgeous Japanese style garden. And the art here from Vincent Dutrait is just absolutely spectacular. In my mind, I thought that this would be a beautifully rendered, more crunchy, and dynamic version of Carcassonne, a classic tiling game. However, this game to me, I'm sorry to say, was just boring. I can tell there was a lot of passion in terms of bringing the culture into the game, but the actual gameplay itself, taking a tile, placing it down, it was very easy to spot which tile placements were most advantageous. There are some different helpers that you can trigger throughout the game that will get you a slightly different action than just placing your tile down, but overall, all of that felt very arbitrary. And I even got some of the mini expansions, but again, they just gave you like a one-time power that you could use, or gave you these cards that again felt very arbitrary. This was a game that felt like you were just unfolding a puzzle as it came out, but not in like a crunchy spatial reasoning type of puzzle way. It was more so just, okay, here's my tile. Yep, that's where it goes. All right, here's my tile. I'm gonna flip this to push it here. That's where it goes, because it'll get me like one more point than it would in the other placement. And overall, the gameplay just kind of felt non-existent. A great alternative to this game would be just straight up old classic Carcassonne. It's not as pretty by any means, but it's got a similar kind of entry level of just getting tiles, placing them out, getting the most points and area control along paths, cities, and farms. And if you're looking for something a little bit more modernized, I would say as far as tiling games go, where you're creating different sections Collectively, Sprawlopolis is a great little wallet game from Button Shy Games that has a similar feel of drawing cards and placing them out. It is cooperative as opposed to competitive, but I think that the various scoring objectives on the backs of each cards for how you want your city to look at the end of the game really lend itself to something that is a little bit more thinky and a little bit more planned out versus just kind of having the game play you. The next game on this list is one that I was so super excited for, but unfortunately the game was a hot mess at best. By Order of the Queen. This is an adventure-style cooperative game where you are going to be going out on quests, protecting the queen, combating events, and overall, the art of the game, the fantasy elements of this game just really spoke to me. I mean, the freaking thing even came with a coloring book of the different characters. Like, how cool is that? I really got into the lore of the game, which I usually don't. So needless to say, when this fell flat in terms of its implementation, very, very sad. One of the biggest things was the die rolling. There wasn't any really great mitigation, and whether you succeeded or not, the outcomes based on the different quest cards or event cards that came up felt very random. Additionally, some of these adventures would have certain like suits of cards that you would want to send out from your hand, but it was so random. They didn't even match what was on the cards or the types of adventures, so you couldn't even get a slight advantage from having those matching adventurers go out on specific types of quests. Overall, this game was just so random, and it was such a disappointment because, like I said, the flavor of the game, the art, the concept, the wide openness of what you could do all sounded really promising. So if you're looking for a game with a similar kind of aesthetic, similar kind of immersiveness in terms of the world and the story, and that is also cooperative, I would definitely recommend checking out Stuffed Fables from Plaid Hat Games. This is more of a storybook game that is very immersive. It's got more interesting gameplay that feels less random. You as the player can actually make decisions as you go along. And I think this is a great alternative if you're looking for a similar weight, similar feel, similar style, and similar mechanic type of game. And last but not least, this game is the oldest game on this list and probably one of the most well-known board games on the face of the planet these days, and that is Catan, or Settlers of Catan. This is a game that was in my household before I was into modern board gaming, but just nothing about it really appealed to me. And later on, once I did get into board gaming, I thought, you know what, I should probably play that game. I really like board games. So I definitely acknowledge that without some of the design elements in this game, board gaming may not have taken the direction it did to get us to more modern games. So I'm super grateful that this game exists and that it was published when it was. But in terms of now here in the present, this game does not do it for me. It's very straightforward. It's got a farming theme, which is not the most inventive, though I'm not going to hate on anybody who likes a good farming game. And while it does have interesting elements of route building, set collection, and even some negotiation, overall, a lot of that is based on a die roll. I do realize that there have been many expansions that have come out since then, some of which address some of these concerns, but just speaking from playing the base game, there was nothing about it that made me want to play it more. And I have played this game quite a few different times just because early on I didn't know how to say no when people would want to play it at game nights, but now with more confidence and experience, I have a whole vast wide array of games that I can substitute out as an alternative if somebody is really into this game and wants to play it. I would say that the biggest thing about this game that gets me held up is the negotiation aspect of it. It always kind of boils down to the same thing. It lends itself to kingmaking. Like, it gives me the same bad vibes and bad juju of Monopoly, which, I don't know. I know I said there would be no straight, hard, cold facts in this video, but you guys, Monopoly, that ain't it. So having Catan give me similar vibes to that, and just terms of the gameplay and the randomness and the die rolls, like it even tells you, oh, these numbers on the dice are more advantageous, so those spots are more valuable. But the number of times that I've rolled like 11 5 times in a freaking row and not gotten to collect any resources, like, bruh, So if you're looking for something in the similar vein of Catan with hexagonal tiles, building routes, collecting resources, trading them in, I have two main suggestions. The first of which is Castles of Burgundy. There's also some die rolling to get different resources, but instead of planning out a route on a central board, you are using that to get tiles to bring onto your own personal board. And how you lay them out can be very interesting in different districts. You can get buildings that give you a little bit more. Granted, in castles, there is a little bit more going on than in Catan, but I would say it would be a great next step if you're looking for something that has a little bit more strategery in it and a little bit less randomness, but overall with a similar kind of feel. My other suggestion would be Concordia. This game does have a central board where you are going to be kind of creating routes to obtain and trade in goods. The thing that I really love about this game is the card play with it. So instead of just having cards that represent resources, you're also going to be able to play them for different scoring benefits. So the types of cards you take that dictate the actions that you'll do is really, really interesting. Again, there's a little bit more going on here than in Catan itself. But overall, the investment in learning it and getting it to the table really pays off. And overall, I think that, again, Catan is a perfectly fine gateway game. I think that its place in board gaming history is very solid. If you love it for the nostalgia, if you love it for any of those aspects, that is great. This is one that I have not played in years, and quite honestly, nor do I ever want to again. There are so many other options in terms of things that have more depth of strategy and in terms of things that appeal more to my sensibilities. So that is my number one disappointing game, and that is Catan. So there you have it. 5 more games that were a disappointment for me. As always, feel free to let me know down in the comments below if you disagree or not, what I was wrong about, or if you have any other games that you would like to suggest based on some of these games that other people may enjoy. That is always super helpful. If you've made it this far, please feel free to subscribe down below. You can also click a like on the video and hit the little bell button so you get a notification anytime a new video is posted. It's free and it really helps out the channel. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye. If you're looking for something that has a soulless, lifeless theme,